we ended up watching Queen of Villains, and within one episode, I texted good man Stephen Conway here, like, we really should talk about this show.
It's well done, and keep in mind this is a dramatization on an epic scale of this story. So it's the Dump Matsumoto story. Dump is the greatest heel in the history of Joshi wrestling. Full stop. There isn't a second place. There is, but it's distant second place to Dump. Dump is the greatest heel that women's wrestling in Japan has ever seen. And it's a story of how she watched the beauty pair, Jackie Sato and Maki Ueda, as a girl watching on TV and wanted to be a pro wrestler and rose through it. When I say a heavy dramatization, this show knows wrestling. It's very, very clear that the people who are writing this show understand and know Japanese pro wrestling and its history. To make this more dramatic, they portray a lot of the matches as being real fights and real feuds, which it was not. That was 100%. What you see in the show happened.
It was not UFC,
but it was not UFC.
They want you to think it was more UFC than WWF.
And it was all work. It was in real life. It was indeed all a work, but it does make for a very compelling show. The stuff with her family is interesting. The stuff behind the scenes, so to speak, as they show her training and working her way to her debut, and then how she kind of finds the Dump character, all that is pretty interesting. So I recommend this show. Just understand you're not watching a documentary, but you know what? I watched some of the Vince McMahon documentary, and this is just about as accurate.
So I liked it for a number of reasons, and I come from a film theory background in a lot of ways. I'm not going to get too in the weeds of it. But one of the things that I always do when it comes to reviewing are two questions. Was it good, and did I like it?
Yeah.
And those are two completely different answers. Okay. In this case, the answer is yes on both.
Yeah.
I immensely enjoyed the dojo scenes where if you are following like Young Lion progression, there's something to be seen about how the sumo style dojo setup that they had in the first 3 episodes, where they were learning the ropes and literally learning the ropes, and all these other transactions that they were doing on the basic level of learning wrestling. They really conveyed everything that you had to do to get to the point where you were in the ring, and the progression of her from day one to the end of the show, like, you forgot how far she came, but the show did everything in its power at the very end to tie together the 5 women that they focused on this entire thing and give you like a moment of like, they've all accomplished some goal that when you started this show, you felt like maybe their story wasn't the focus, but their story was wrapped up. And that's something that I respected, even though this was a story about Dump Matsumoto. You also had Chigusa Nagayo in there, Lioness Asoko,
Asuka,
Matsumoto,
Yeah, the current Asuka is named after Lioness Asuka. She took the name from that because it was one of her heroes. The woman playing Asuka is one of her heroes, Lioness Asuka from the Crush Gals. It captures a couple of things that I think are interesting and very foreign to current wrestling, and that is just the idea that the Japanese women's wrestlers were idols in the late 70s and early 80s to the point of having singles like Natsupoi and Tam Nakano have released an EP where they sing, and of course, they come from a bit of an, or at least Tam comes from a bit of an idol background, but Jackie Sato and Maki Ueda had hit singles on the radio to go with being on a wildly popular television show, and the heat that these people had with the teenage girl audience. Like, nothing is more important to you than what you're into as a teenager. It takes your whole life over. I remember how I felt about the stuff that I was into as a teenager. And that's the people lived and died by this. The audience heat. If you go back on YouTube and see, for the top matches, the big time matches, the heat was incredible, and it captures it in the last episode when they had a hair versus hair match between Chigusa and Dump, which was a work. Well, not the way the show portrays it, although it's entertaining on the show, but the heat in that building for that hair versus hair match, you would have thought that the entire audience was going to get their head shaved if Chigusa lost, because they were absolutely living and dying with her. And it captures some of that, and Dump attacking the Crush Gals while they performed in the ring, singing and doing choreography, because that was part of it. Like you were an idol to have singing, dancing, wrestling, all of that was part of your job in those days for some of them. And of course, Dump ruined their debut of their new song by attacking them and setting things up. So it captures a time that's lost right now, because they have lost that teen audience to an extent over the years. All Japan Women had it, and then by the time it got around to the mid 90s, it was mostly just wrestling fans, but for a while, and in the mid 90s, partially, it was starting to change a little bit in the mid 90s, All Japan Women. But before that, mandatory retirement age of 25, no matter how popular you are, 25 years old, you retire. That type of mentality where when you're pumping out these girl groups and boy groups, once they get to about 25 years old, time to move them out because we got to have younger ones in. A very different ethos, and it's intriguing to see that portrayed, and they did a pretty good job of getting over the idea of just how popular the beauty pair were, how difficult it was for the company when the beauty pair broke up, when Ueda retired, and then the boom of the Crush Gals Dump Matsumoto era, which gave us eventually Bull Nakano, came in, and others that are now legends. I really recommend it. Again, it's not a documentary, but it does capture a time, and it's
a dramatization.
It's clear that the people writing it, the people in it, are real. I mean, you can go and then Google the folks. If you hear a name in it, Google it. That person was an All Japan Women's wrestler, and the timeline they have is about right. It's just that they make out the matches to be shoots, but other than that, they get it right. And the wrestling part of it, I don't know what Dump's family life was like. I hope it was better than that. Good Lord. But I hope that's dramatized for her sake. But it's entertaining. And I'll tell you what, to this day, Jeremy, I remember this. When I went to Korakuen Hall to see that Noah show in 2019, which is only it's 5 years ago now, but nevertheless, way, way after this timeline, there was an ad that played on the little projector screen at Korakuen Hall. Just a little series of ads, and one of them had Dump Matsumoto in it, whacking people with the metal can, playfully, as she was promoting some kind of product, and everybody knew who she was. And she is absolutely part of the zeitgeist in Japan, and is just basically a household name from those days.
My favorite venue nerd. How many venues could you identify from the show that New Japan had run?
I spotted Osaka Joe Hall for sure. That was one. They went there. Korakuen, they used Korakuen quite well. And then for the most part, that was just about it for the actual halls. I think there were a couple of times they named one but didn't actually use it. And there are a couple that no longer exist. So they had to kind of use sets for those. So, but yeah, Korakuen's in it quite a bit. And Osaka Joe for sure. I think they used those halls to film in too. They look like it anyway. Those did not look green screened, although I'll admit the green screens are looking better than before. Definitely recorded in Korakuen though, no doubt about it.
There were definitely acting performances that were more Japanese than they were westernized concepts of acting, but we could talk about the actress who played Dump Matsumoto, Urian Retriever. Born in 1990, she gained a significant amount of weight to play Kaoru Matsumoto. Her first role in television was in 2018. She had one role. Since then, she had done episodes here or there in 2021. FM 999, Dragon Sakura, Is Love Sustainable, and Oshi ga Joshi ni Narimashite. Those were all drama series where she had episodes or thing. This was her first leading role, and she was in 2 movies at some point as a factory worker and just as a role here or there. This was it for her, and I thought she did a great job as the lead in this show.
She did a heck of a job, yeah, and I thought she's an excellent actress. And most of it is there's a little bit of that J drama stuff where you kind of over project the emotions, but that's kind of that style.
Absolutely, that's what I was saying about
the Japanese style, yeah. Just like people joke about the Norwegian.
The emoting is very different in Japan.
Just like if you go to see any kind of a cop drama from Sweden, Norway, or something like that, everybody's very sullen. It's just the style. And J drama sometimes they overinflate the emotions, and that's just the way that they do it. It's that style of acting, and it's pretty terrific. But good example of it right there.